Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing good, and I'm really excited that you were able to join today's webinar, The Future of Category Management. My name is Drasko Jelavic. I'm the CEO and founder of Cirtuo, and I would like to present you how the future of category management would look like from our perspective. And of course, I'm especially excited to show you for the first time the business strategy alignment matrix, so-called SAM, which supports category managers to more easily develop their strategies, align the organization with the business requirements, and develop digital roadmap. In this session, we have prepared 45 minutes approximately presentation, and then there is a Q&A session. So should you have any questions along the way, please just use the Q&A button in the Zoom, and then we will answer the question, or I will answer the question at the end of this session. So let's start. Let me quickly introduce the company and myself. Just a second. Sorry. So here is Cirtuo is actually a global company on the market for the last decade. We are a leader in digitizing category strategies, especially in 2019, as we introduced a guided strategy creation module. We were able to attract many companies, especially Fortune 500. So today we are with approximately 100 clients, and as a company, we are growing. But more important is that there is a need for strategy in procurement, and that's the reason why we are growing. Recently, we also won an award with procurement leaders, so I'm especially proud on that one. So we heard a lot in the last time, is category management dead or alive? We recently delivered a very nice event, Cirtuo Procurement Forum in Dubrovnik. It was an event dedicated to category management where we discussed with 120 of our clients the future of category management. And you can imagine how shocked was the audience in the opening speech when Dr. Eloise Epstein, a leading partner of Carney, the forward thinker in terms of digitalization in procurement, declared category management dead. Everyone was shocked. But of course, she soon clarified what does she mean by category management is dead. So, of course, the way how it's done today, like with PowerPoint and Excel, with tactical targets, not engaging stakeholders enough, it's probably that, but it is still a key instrument to balance the supply demand, to influence the stakeholders and suppliers. So in our practice, and we are more than 10 years on the market with several thousands of workshops and 10,000 of hours dedicated to strategy development together with the category managers, we daily are facing procurement myths like sourcing is strategic, or people say, let's do the opportunity assessment first and then develop the strategy. Often we notice that strategy is actually considered as a nice to have. And also many companies are more focused on introducing source to pay S2P platforms rather than strategy where they can really add value. So the question is, what is the way forward? And I would like to bust some of the mentioned needs along the way in the presentation. I'm especially intrigued by three key events in procurement. The first one is accelerated complexity, which we see in the last couple of years, especially with COVID. I don't have to mention economic turmoil. Everyone is facing it literally every day, from inflation, shortages, and so on, regulation. But I'm also really happy to live in the era of expanded business requirements. So in the past, we were focused mainly on cost reductions, 2010 to 2020. This was the longest economic growth actually ever, and procurement was, let's face it, maybe not that important, and everything was about the growth and cost reductions. But since COVID, we've seen a lot of other requirements or expectations on procurement in terms of growth, in terms of sustainability, in terms of environment, diversity. So there are many new expectations which category managers need to meet. Of course, there is a cognitive overload because everything is important. Cost reductions matter in the last 6 to 12 months, again, more than ever. So it's really not easy to work in procurement and determine priorities. Many CPOs, many procurement professionals tell us how difficult it is to manage their daily agenda and strategy in general. Of course, the second point, which I find kind of interesting or fascinating, is that when we talk to procurement professionals, many of them say, well, you know, strategy is fine, but we are not mature enough. So I'm actually wondering, after decades of procurement development, consulting projects, transformation projects, educations in procurement, acquiring new skills, many procurement organizations and professionals feels like there is still a way to go and to improve the maturity, right? But to improve maturity, actually, you need to have the right insight that's sometimes missing. Are we strategic enough? Are we doing tactics or strategy? What's our attitude towards cost reductions? What are our capabilities to address the value and talk the value, right? And do we have the right leadership to make that change happen? So accelerated complexity and insufficient maturity actually leads to a need to redefine the role of procurement, a kind of paradigm shift. So we need to understand, to address the value. Strategy should be first. This is something which I will explain in a bit. And of course, we finally want to become a business partner because procurement today defines the art of possible in business at all. I mean, if you don't manage your supply chain well on the front end to your clients, you can think and give any kind of promises or have any kind of ideas, but it actually won't work. The old procurement I like to compare with a baseball player who is hitting the ball with the baseball bat, like beating suppliers. That's what we did in the past. And we need to change that paradigm for sure. I really like to use this illustration, which shows on the horizontal axis the value chain in a reverse order. So you can clearly see that from procurement perspective, the biggest value, the biggest impact on business, where we can impact value, cost, and risks, is actually in the early stage, so-called early involvement, where demand is being designed or discussed, where the concept is being designed or discussed, where someone determines specification. This is where procurement needs to sit with its knowledge, insight, technology, and actually support the business addressing the right values and right business requirements. Unfortunately, in the past decades, we were involved too late. It was maybe a little bit of a comfort zone to be involved that late with sourcing, when everywhere is predefined, suppliers are pre-selected, we need to do contracting, negotiation. It's actually everything more or less defined, and you just need to, play that old game which you know so good. So I trust and believe that we will see a lot of automation in tactical and operational activities, and we will have more time. And this is often the argument when I ask procurement leaders, okay, what's the plan? They say, you know what? We need to increase efficiency, bring more competencies, and then we will be able to add more value and concentrate and focus on the strategy. So this illustration clearly represents where the value sits. Please don't forget it as I go forward in the presentation. So, but how to do it? How we can procurement add more value? Let me start from the perspective all of you probably know best, and this is good old sourcing. Sourcing is, of course, here to stay. As I was delivering trainings in the past, even sourcing trainings in the past, I noticed there are basically three types of sourcing. The first one is sourcing type C. It's on-demand sourcing. Basically, it's the project. It could be CapEx. It could be any like daily demand which you need to address. Then our favorite in procurement is probably annual agreement sourcing. Annually, we discuss new prices, new contracts with suppliers. And the trouble with the sourcing B and C is that we always make the same dance with suppliers. It's the same discussions internally with stakeholders, it's same discussions with the same people on supplier side. We probably use the same RFP templates, RFI. Our behavior, our pattern, how we approach the sourcing type B and C is probably the same. And we definitely want to change that. Why? Because the result will be more or less the same. The only difference is how favorable is the market and maybe some change in your demand, some smaller change in your demand or specification. I noticed as a consultant at that point of time, I was with Carney, we primarily executed so-called category review sourcing. It actually means that we go for more stakeholder engagement, more supplier engagement. We were listening even better to business requirements and try to identify the true needs of the organization. And we were actually developing the category strategy. And once you develop category strategy, and category strategy does not address only mid or long-term perspective, if you sit together with your stakeholders, if you approach more senior stakeholders, they will quite often reveal a whole new world of opportunities and maybe challenges which will be in favor of your short-term goals, of your short-term sourcing. And then sourcing actually becomes just a tool to implement your strategy. So bear in mind, strategic sourcing is not category management. Nevertheless, developing the category strategy to do sourcing is highly valuable also on a short term. That's at least my experience for the last 15 years. Now I noticed another interesting pattern as the company Cirtuo was small and I was doing my first workshops supporting category managers to develop their category strategies. I leave them with the technology, ask them to develop the analysis and the strategy. And also I sit together with them quite often for half an hour, 45 minutes to review the category strategy. And soon I noticed the pattern that all strategic discussion, is the strategy is more or less good or more or less right, boiled down to two basic questions. The first question was, are you fully aware of your business requirements at all levels, on the group level, local level, divisional level, project level, whatsoever? And are you aware of all the market challenges and internal challenges either to support or to overcome when addressing the business requirements? So everything boils down to these two questions. So if you want to develop a category strategy, supplier strategy, negotiation strategy, procurement strategy, any kind of strategy, procurement, there are two key questions which are key elements and feed into that strategy. Easier said than done, because many category managers struggle to answer these two questions on business requirements and challenges clearly. They had, for example, difficulties to understand what's the business requirement, what's the challenge. They had some difficulties to approach more senior level in the organization, to understand senior stakeholders, to understand the genuine business requirements. I noticed every time we talk to the senior stakeholders, discussions were literally mind-blowing. These guys were not really mentioning cost reductions or savings, maybe taking it for granted, but their business requirements were all around the place for growth, for more quality, for assurance of supply, for sustainability. So it was actually mind-blowing. Sometimes category managers actually struggle to do the translation of the business language into the language of the business requirements. So basically, it's still quite a tough job for many category managers, procurement professionals to address the business requirements and challenges and opportunities adequately. Nevertheless, good news is that this insight, at least for us, for Cirtuo, defined the four-step approach to develop any strategy in procurement. First, you need to understand your stakeholders and business requirements. Then you need to understand the challenges and opportunities. Once you get there, you can translate it into strategy with corresponding strategic objectives. And then you translate it into initiatives and results. So that's the four-step approach. That's end-to-end process for whatever you want, for procurement development, for category management, for supplier management, for negotiations. It's just four-step process which clearly defines the path how to develop, validate, and execute any kind of strategies. Now we apply the four-step process to the four levels which I mentioned, the four layers which are important for procurement. Procurement as a function, your many categories, suppliers, and negotiations. Recently, I've been asked by a client to redevelop and review their procurement organization, and we asked for permission to talk to the C-level to understand where is the company actually heading. And I can tell you, talking to the C-level, especially the CEO, was mind-blowing, because all of a sudden he asked, he said, you know what, we want to manage the growth, we want to grow 2 times the revenue in just 3 years. We want to shift our business focus from distribution company to logistic company. We want to enter the private label. We want to deal better with energy management. We want to find alternative sources of finance. All of the things which were actually not mentioned on the lower levels when we were talking about category strategies. So there is a risk if you don't approach your senior stakeholders. And I noticed that many C-level interviews were based off non-existing strategy, non-existing, not documented, but discussed on top level. So not everything was documented. It was the future thinking of the business. So it's actually very, very important to address the top level to understand the business requirements. So you need to cascade your business requirements from the top level to categories, to suppliers, to negotiations. So it's a top-down, bottom-up alignment. Just bear in mind, the game is very simple, because when you develop category strategy, for example, for categories, and you want to address the right business requirements, then what are you actually doing? You are looking for the sources to increase value, reduce costs, or mitigate the risks. So your category strategies will consequently address value, cost, and risks. This is a nice double check which you can make when you read your category strategy. When you develop your supplier strategy, you want to do what with your suppliers, with critical suppliers? You want to increase the performance, you want to improve the relationship, you want to trigger the innovation, you want to mitigate a specific supplier risk. And if you enter negotiation with the supplier, just to remind you, negotiation is a tool to resolve the conflict between supplier and yourself. You want to develop a kind of strategy or approach to balance between the goal which you want to achieve in negotiation and relationship with supplier. So it's very easy to put a framework around category strategy, supplier strategy, negotiation strategy, because you know exactly what do you need to address with which strategy. I'm also fascinated by the insight how to align the business requirements. First off, you need to identify your stakeholders. Sometimes I spend literal days with organizations to identify in their multidimensional 7D matrix who are the stakeholders on top level, local level. It's sometimes from the group level not easy to identify who are my stakeholders in my big organization. Then it's important to translate the business requirements. The business will talk the business language. They will not necessarily talk procurement language. Especially the more senior people you address, the more they talk business, less procurement. But please, it's not always needed to involve your category, your stakeholders into development of category analysis, like 5 forces, SWOT, and so they just don't care about any strategy, any procurement framework. They care about what they care. They care about the business they have. They have concerns of their own. And this is something which we want to address. You are also, when you align business requirements, you are entitled to challenge them and tell them, guys, thank you for the business requirement, but given our current market conditions or the future expected market conditions, it's not possible to achieve. And of course, you will often need to deconflict the business requirements coming from different kind of organizational structure from your organization, different functions, different projects, different business units, right? And last but not least, you will need to prioritize the business requirements. The points 1 to 5 are connected with the human skills. I doubt a robot or any kind of AI will be able to deliver 1 to 5 quite well, because it's always connected with a kind of judgment, kind of validation, kind of mobilization, kind of, or connected to a risk appetite. Doing business is always connected with a certain risk. So you need to assess the risk. So the good news is that business requirement alignment, I like to call it the new holy grail of procurement, actually requires human skills. You can literally develop strategies primarily on business requirements. Only, of course, you will need market insight and market intelligence to make it happen. But today we do it opposite. We put too much emphasis on market analysis. You get very nice reports. The question is, so what? You need to contextualize the insights into your business requirements. I was really happy finding this quote from Norman Foster, the famous architect who was actually developing and building the buildings all his life. He realized it's, or at least his statement, he claims he realized it's not just the buildings, it's about the city. So I like to draw a parallel with procurement and say it's not just about, sourcing events, efficiency improvement, savings, maybe even it's not just about category strategies. It's about building the whole city, which fits into the environment of the business. So how to do it? Let me present it to you. I would like to show in the next minute the new strategy alignment matrix. It's almost the first time I'm showing that publicly, so I'm very proud of the SAM. So on the horizontal axis, you will find the process in 4-step as described previously, and then you will see the layers in which you actually need to address procurement categories, suppliers, and negotiations. So it's the first layer which you actually need to address when you develop strategy in even your organization. Is actually the layer of developing a procurement strategy. You want to understand where is your company actually developing? Are we growing? Are we managed by costs or the cost leadership? Are we innovative company? Are we sustainable company? Of course, it will be a mix of everything, but it's very important to know what is the predominant agenda of your company, because in procurement, we tend to solve everything with a baseball bat, beating suppliers, but you need to understand what is the overall agenda. Is that the growth, innovation, cost, sustainability, and how is the mix of all these elements? And then actually you will develop a diversified procurement strategy which addresses global level, regional level, business unit level. And please, which is very important, don't mix up the procurement strategy with transformation strategy. Quite often I've been presented procurement strategy, which is actually a transformation strategy for procurement. So it's a quite procurement-centric view. You need to address the business requirements. That's very important with your procurement strategy. So if the business requirements are A, B, and C, how are you going to address that? Of course, we talk today about category management. We see category management being at the heart of that model. Why? because we are organized, we as a procurement community, the procurement professionals are organized by categories, direct categories, indirect categories. You will have your category tree with many levels, and it's probably fair to be organized by categories because this is a logical scope to manage the category, to talk to the stakeholders, talk to the suppliers. It's a logical scope to balance, to make the supply-demand balance. So I like to see category strategies as a kind of operationalization of the overall strategy. It is here to stay. It is not that. It is actually more actual and more needed than ever. And of course, in the last step, you always derive the initiatives resulting out of your category strategies. The next level will be supplier strategies, which actually support the category strategies. You cannot develop a good supplier strategy without having at least one sentence about the category strategy and what you want to achieve. Of course, you don't need to develop strategies for all your suppliers, but just the suppliers where there is an issue with performance or relationship or anything which matters to you. And last but not least, we would like to see a red line, the connecting all the dots from the top to the bottom with your negotiations. Once you negotiate, you should also think and have in mind your supplier and category strategies. So everything is interconnected. If you want to be successful developing your strategies in organizations, you cannot approach it in an isolated way, just looking at one of the elements. You need a holistic approach to developing your category strategies. Otherwise, either category strategies or supplier strategies will be too tactical because you then probably talk to your peers in other functions, and they also have just mainly tactical issues. So this is the holistic approach to developing and delivering strategies. But this is also a holistic approach to developing your organization and digital roadmap. So it's almost impossible to develop organization without an insight into all of your strategies. Let me give you just a few examples. We will probably agree that if your organization is more about growth, new countries, new products, or it's more in cost leadership, you will probably need a different type of skills, different type of KPIs, different type of organization. So you need to develop and adjust your today's organization more to the overall purpose and overall expectation, because this is something which drives your capabilities. This is something which drives and determines your organizational matrix, your hybrid models in procurement, your KPIs. I noticed in the past, and this is a kind of legacy in procurement, that many organizations are very much sourcing minded, procurement centric, not really well connected with the stakeholders and the purpose. So if you ask me, my observation, I'm now 25 years in procurement, what's the biggest problem with procurement? It's actually not hitting the right targets. That would be my answer number one. So please take care that you hit the right target and listen to your stakeholders. We also noticed in our practice how important is the category strategy to develop an organization, especially as we work with large organizations over 10 billion, sometimes over 50 billion. Their categories will be billions. In the big pharma or big telecom, the biggest categories is a billion or 500 million. So now imagine that number. It's actually a business in business. So the category manager is not a category manager. He or she is actually the CEO of the category. We noticed that 10% of the categories make 70% of the purchasing volume across our 100 clients in our technology. So it's very important that you actually compare all the strategies and have a look at it, because it will tell you what is the global or local balance in your category. Do the category teams need to be on local or more on the group level, closer to supplier, closer to the internal stakeholder? Does it need to be more centralized or decentralized? What are required future capabilities, make or buy, and so on and so on? So your procurement strategy and category strategy will have a strong impact, or should have a strong impact at your current organization. Of course, very few companies we supported are building organization from the scratch. So you today have an organization. I would just kindly ask you and suggest to better consider your strategy and for procurement and for categories once developing organizational design, because it's essential. I see too many transformations going on without developing any single strategy, maybe listening to stakeholders, but not formulating and connecting all the strategies, and then they create a category management organization which does not perform, because one size fits all category management organization does not really work well. And digital roadmap is actually just an extension of organizational design. Once you are clear of your business requirements, you have a clarity on strategy, you have clarity on your organization, digital roadmap should be something quite obvious. It's very important to put the right priorities, right focus. Many companies truly suffer with different source-to-pay implementation. They put priority on that, but any source-to-pay is actually, if you remember the value curve, is just not really adding that much value. It's just efficiency improvement. Of course, you need to have it, but spending 1 or 2 years on source to pay and then waiting to do the strategy just doesn't make sense, because, the life is somewhere else then in that case. So the question is, what will the future bring to us in terms of the profession? Is there a need for category managers in the future? You are already familiar with the 4-step process and with our strategy alignment matrix, the SAM. It's a 4-step approach, and I tried actually to visualize where is the human intelligence relevant. It's relevant at the beginning of the process, as stated, to identify, prioritize, challenge, deconflict, align, and so on the business requirements. It's a very human skills which are needed at the beginning of the process around the mobilization and risk appetite. But then what we do at Cirtuo, we combine artificial intelligence and market intelligence to suggest the best category and suggest the best supplier strategies. Once it is done by the system and we are increasing the automation in that process, you still will need, in between strategic objectives and initiative results, you will still need a human intelligence to validate the strategies, to mobilize the stakeholders, to derive the right initiatives, to prioritize the initiatives, to put the goal behind the initiatives. And then the implementation of any kind of initiative. It could be sourcing, it could be anything else which is resulting out of at least 100 value levers for categories and 80 value levers for suppliers. It can be anything around reducing complexity, standardization, make or buy, and so on and so on. You will probably know all the levers in procurement. So it is difficult to eliminate humans from that equation, because some part of the end-to-end process is always connected with the human qualities. Of course, technology will require a different set of skills. Humans will be enabled with technology, so they will get a kind of super skill, but they will still need to be skillful. And we believe that the former or past soft skills are actually the new hard skills. It's a kind of consulting type skills with stakeholder engagement, especially critical thinking. This is something which we are sometimes missing in regard to strategy development. So in the past couple of decades, we put a lot of effort on developing sourcing. The community was talking strategy, but actually walking tactics. We need to shift that if we want to avoid being completely disrupted, because the value is actually clearly with identifying and addressing the right business requirements. So the question is why we need technology support in that area and how it will look like. So when you look at the strategy alignment matrix, the SAM, with just 4 steps in the process and let's call it just 4 levels of procurement category suppliers negotiations, there is all of a sudden there is a huge complexity which you need to manage. Corporations will have, or companies will have, hundreds of categories, suppliers negotiations. There are so many stakeholders in every category. There are changes every day around challenges and business requirements with corresponding analysis which need to be updated. Your strategies will result with thousands of initiatives. Most of you work in the multi-layered procurement organizations with business units, technologies, products, regions, you name it. And of course, there are many levers, value levers for category suppliers and negotiation. So all that actually leads to a huge complexity which can barely be managed in an old-fashioned way. You need to imagine that as a kind of neural network, because all of these dots are just simply vibrating, full of energy. And today, being agile in procurement, there is one myth again. Agile, it doesn't mean to be better in tactical, negotiate faster, make an RFP faster or more efficiently. Agile means that you are always proactively addressing any kind of change in business requirements and challenges. That's the new agile. So to do so, to switch from the reactive to proactive mode, you will definitely need technology to support these many dots in the universe of strategy in development, in procurement, and the execution. At Cirtuo, many years ago, we started digitizing category strategy when the demand was probably not there or not in that big demand. So we primarily used in the past, now developing the 4th generation of the technology, but we used and still rely on the methodological framework, which is proven for decades, as many companies do, but they just do it manually. So that's one area of our development, digitizing the current processes in category and supplier management, and all that being guided and supported with an expert system. And also actually in the future, we are currently digitizing the whole strategy alignment matrix, the SAM, by linking and aligning all the levers in vertical and horizontal direction. The content without context is nothing, so we actually are not digitizing just the content piece of information, but all the context, so that when your content meets the context is coming from your company, your stakeholders. We are improving the algorithm for the category strategy and supplier strategy. And as you can imagine, as there are too many dots to be connected, we also need to improve the strategy governance. So this is just one of the key directions. These are the key directions where we want to develop our category, our technology to support category managers and procurement professionals to better articulate and address the value they bring to the business. Of course, sustainability is important through all these development topics. This belongs to the business requirements, actually. So I like to picture and like to see procurement as a kind of mission control center. I always like that comparison. If you like it or not, the future technology, automation, AI, you name it, will bring a higher level of automation and will probably reduce some of the jobs in the procurement. I think it's nothing surprising, but still there is a need for humans to drive the process, to supervise and to monitor the process. And of course, we need to increase the focus on the soft skills. So it's a kind of SWOT team, sitting in procurement, being supported automatically with the systems, being navigated, being well connected with all the stakeholders. This is how I would like to see the future of procurement. Finally, as we developed the strategy alignment matrix, so-called SAM, we just actually a couple of days ago checked what SAM actually means, the name SAM. And it actually means God has heard. So we found that a kind of practical, a nice parallel to what we do in procurement. We want procurement to get heard by business, but we also business to become heard by procurement. So it's moving upstream along the value chain curve. So I'm taking baseball today to make some comparison. You put your baseball cap, which is called SAM, but you leave your baseball bat, you know, and you use the strategy alignment matrix to address the value and to actually address and articulate value, develop the right strategies, the right initiatives, and actually monitor and move along according to challenges and business requirements. My final statement is thank you. Long live category management. It's not dead. Thank you for your attention. Now I would like to move to questions and answers. I need to check in my system if there are any questions. So one of the questions is why do I think procurement is still mostly focused on tactics? I think, and this is the pattern which we have observed over the last 25 years. This is the way how we raised the expectations of our stakeholders in the past decades. It was a lot about cost reductions and tactics. So it's very difficult to make that quantum leap in other direction when the language is very tactical, the language in procurement. So we need to have a clear definitions, what is strategy, what is tactics, what is operations, and actually gradually change the attitude and put the strategy in the first place. I think several myths needs to be busted, primarily that strategy is something nice to have. And moreover, that strategy is just addressing mid and long-term perspective, but not the short-term perspective, which I can confirm. I personally developed thousands of category strategies. We every time identify the next level of value levers when we were discussing the strategy. Also, one of the questions is why do I think procurement is so slow in picking up technologies or strategic technologies? Well, I think there is a mismatch in the operating model addressing the value, and therefore there is a mismatch in the tools we select. There is a strong focus on tactical tools. And of course, there are many tools. If I would be a CPO today or responsible for selecting tools, I would be probably confused as well. But the better you can address the value, the better the technologies, which helps you to get closer to the stakeholders and understand actually how to deliver your category strategies. Give me a second just to read. Can technology help with obtaining some of the skills required for the future? I would say definitely this is something what we have seen in the past, especially during COVID. When many companies approached us and wanted to deploy Cirtuo as a technology to drive category management, one of the key arguments was like leveraging the learning curve with the technology. We actually provide more or less the standard process, guided, well-structured in a disciplined manner, and it definitely impacts the learning curve. So I think technology can drive additional insights and help procurement to mature. So if you struggle with the maturity, it's of course, please consider if using the technology is also would help your team to get the maturity. Let me try to identify maybe another question. At what organizational side should company consider technology like Cirtuo? What are the prerequisites? We have also very small clients who they have just 2 or 3 employees, category managers in procurement, right? So we've seen them using it beneficially. Even the smallest organizations would have a couple of categories which are for them important, couple of or few suppliers where they need to develop strategies. It will always result with hundreds of initiatives. We integrate all the analysis which are actually needed to drive the performance in procurement. So the size does not really matter in terms of usage of the technology. Of course, the bigger the company, the bigger the benefit will probably be. There's another interesting question: how ChatGPT will change procurement, category, supplier, and risk management? Of course, as you can imagine, as a procurement provider, we are also trying to understand what the generative AI will bring to procurement community and how it will impact the technology. At least for us, we started implementing it and experimenting with it. It definitely supports the ability of category managers to express themselves. We call it ability to write. We are already testing it on a storytelling. So whenever you develop the strategic content and it's a kind of too much of the content, you can put a ChatGPT to resolve that and to develop a storytelling. So I think that ChatGPT and similar tools will enable technology and will enable actually category managers to better perform. So at least for us, it's ability to speak, ability to write. Of course, currently there is a big disclaimer around that technology, and this is that it sits on public servers. So once it gets localized, then it will be very interesting for many companies to use it. Then there is a question: what does the abbreviation RAXI and GRXI and so on stands for? 30, 40 years ago, there was a model published on how procurement should address their interviews with the stakeholders, and someone developed so-called RAXI model, right? A regulatory assurance of supply, quality, innovation, service, and cost, probably not in that order. And we also noticed that there are a few more in the last couple of years. There is more and more attention on growth. There is more attention on of course, sustainability as a one big topic. There is more attention on diversity. So I'm really happy to live in an era of expanded business requirements. It makes procurement life even more interesting. Please allow me to read the questions further. There's a nice question asking, is SAM, the Strategy Alignment Matrix of Cirtuo? Yes, it is. It's an overarching model, which actually describes the development, validation, and execution, all of the strategies. And we are actually currently develop our technology according to that model. Then there are a few other questions which I'm trying to read. Some of them are quite long, so please, give me a second. Okay, well, one of the questions is addressing the poor data quality, and we hear that a lot. We hear that a lot between the question around, okay, we have a poor data quality, can we use technology like Cirtuo? The data quality when you develop a category strategy is just a kind of relevant, you know, especially the spend data. Of course, the first analysis will be the spend analysis. What the size of your category, how many suppliers you have, and so on and so on. it doesn't have to be perfect. As a matter of fact, we noticed a very simple pattern. As people, procurement professionals start to develop their category strategies, they gain more insight into how to improve the data quality and what is the needed level. So sometimes you don't need a perfect data quality to develop strategy, and often an analysis and strategy in a category will reveal you, will provide an additional insight how to improve the quality. It especially applies on the classification of the category, classification of the supplier. So you need some patience, you need some persistence, you need some trial and error approach in developing category strategies to improve the data quality. It will never be perfect, but you can, of course, improve it. So one of the short questions, I'm grateful for short questions, otherwise I struggle to read them on a small pop-up window. What is the link between Bureau and Cirtuo? Bureau is our preferred partner for market intelligence, and when you are guided with the analysis of the category in each category, you can reach out to market intelligence provider, either Bureau or provider of your choice, actually to get the right answer to your question. It is asking if the SAM is overarching method and process. Do have one for category management? Well, the 4-step approach, as you have seen that in the SAM, at each level, that's actually the methodology for the categories as well. So it's always a 4-step process. It's understanding the business requirements, understanding the challenges, understanding the strategies or developing the strategies, and translating it into initiatives. And behind the strategies analysis, there is a methodological framework. There are tools developed, guided tools, which help you actually to develop a category strategy. What are the potential use cases for AI to aid the category managers on key strategic topics? I'm grateful for numerous questions. I feel really encouraged. As mentioned, at least from our perspective, AI can bring in additional data insights. It can bring on and sharpen your context. It can help you with the ability to write the strategies. So, of course, we need to see how it develops, but there are numerous ways how AI can support you in the process of developing and actually executing the category strategies. Okay, it's indicated there are no more open questions. I'm grateful for your time and interest. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much, and I wish you a great day and a great evening. Appreciate it.